All right, so welcome everyone for attending our webinar. Hopefully everyone can see my screen, my presentation. Just going to do a few little introductions before we get going. First of all, thank you so much for coming on this final mile journey with us today. I know everyone's very busy and have a lot of things on in this very crazy time, so we really appreciate that you're coming with us and sharing this hour with us. So just as a way of introductions, we've got Kerryn Law, who's the systems accountant at Ports of Auckland, who's kindly joining us today and sharing her story through this reporting journey she's got. You guys have Wayne Goss, he's the regional sales director of Certent in Asia Pac, and of course myself, Belinda Johnson. So just a few things, we are going to record this session, so we will make it available for everyone that's attended afterwards. So if you've missed anything, don't worry, or fall asleep, don't worry, we'll share it with you later. And also just questions. What we want to do is just run through the presentations if we can, and then take questions towards the end. So you'll see on your screen there's a little question section. So either in the question section, pop a question in there for me, or in the chat, pop some questions in there, and then we'll try and answer those at the end of the meeting. If we can't get to all your questions, by all means, we'll come back later on and answer those for you. So just a little bit about Mindful. There's obviously, I see there's a whole lot of existing customers on the call, and there's also some new customers. So just for those new people, Mindful, our why is to help our customers make sense of this fast-changing world. That's what gets us up in this crazy world these days, and we really are passionate about helping customers just make sense of all the changes and automation and craziness out there. Our values are, we live it, we strip it back, and we keep it real. We live it as really being passionate about what we do. And if you've ever dealt with some of the Mindful people, that's really us. We love what we do, and we try and make things simple. IT is full of jargon, the environment's full of jargon. We try and strip it really back so you can understand, and we also keep it real around expectations. So those are the three values we're passionate about. We do three things at Mindful. We do data management, we do all things planning, and then we do narrative reporting. So today's session is all around the narrative reporting, the final mile of automation. So a lot of you have done your data management, data's under control, planning, you're doing great, but the reporting can be cumbersome. And what we find in a lot of our clients is they close on day 2, day 3. They've done really good work. The finance teams have to close very quickly their accounts, but then the reporting drags on, and clients spend, and they've got highly skilled accountants spending an enormous amount of time cross-checking numbers and different reports. And as the CFO puts that last journal through, they've got to go through all the sets of reports, making sure what was a net profit that went up has now gone down, and we need to make sure we don't say it's gone up when it's gone down and be embarrassed. I think the biggest thing for most CFOs is that embarrassment when a board member picks up a report and says, well, actually, you know, you've quoted this, it's incorrect, or it's referring to July, this is now August, right? It's very embarrassing. And it also there's the trust, you know, when you put reports out as a business, as you all know, it's your brand, it's your trust that you put out there. And if a bank or an external person consumes a bit of data in a report and it's incorrect, it's just not good for, you know, for that confidence in your numbers. And we have quite a few customers that do a lot of external reporting, and getting those numbers absolutely correct and that narrative response correct is absolutely empirical for their business. So without further ado, I've had a few people contact me and say, look, we're joining because we want to hear the port story, which is just amazing. So Ports of Auckland, most of you that have driven past the port have seen all the automation happening in the port. You've seen all those containers stacking up. I always know if it's going well in Auckland. It depends on how much containers there are. And as you guys have seen, there's a whole lot of automation happening in the port. And with the port, automation is the way forward. So it's by no, you know, it's also stretching into the reporting side. They've really taken automation through the whole business. So I've got Kerryn Law, who's joined me today, very kindly taken up a time just to talk through us about journey. So I'm just going to ask Kerryn a few questions and just to hear from Kerryn about her journey. So Kerryn, tell us about yourself and your organization, the ports, what you guys do. There's some people that may not know about what you guys do.
Sure. So Ports of Auckland is New Zealand's largest import port. Nearly 3/4 of our inbound cargo is for the Auckland region, which means that we can deliver goods quickly, cheaply, and with a relatively small carbon footprint. And up until COVID, we were also handling over 100 cruise ships on an annual basis. So I guess the one constant thing really about port is change. We change constantly. As Auckland grows, our freight demand grows, which means that we have to be looking at ways to deal with bigger ships, which means we have more containers, we have more cars. And given we're not increasing our footprint anymore, we are effectively constantly looking for new and better ways to increase our capacity and our throughput. So as Belinda mentioned, automation. So that will allow us to actually stack our containers one higher than what we currently do, which is going to increase our capacity, which means that we can bring in, you know, all the warehouse goods, all the bananas, all the everything else that that we bring through, even an odd giraffe. So yeah. So Ports of Auckland, we are actually owned by Auckland Council. So for us, from a reporting perspective, that actually adds an extra level of reporting. So not only are we, you know, Joe Blogg's profitable company, but we're also a CCO, which is a council-controlled organisation, which means that we've got to report under both standards. So yeah. As for myself, as the systems accountant, effectively it's my responsibility to ensure that we're able to report accurate data quickly. And I look after all the core finance-based systems. So that includes AX for our ERP system, TM1 for our planning and forecasting tool, and CDM for our reporting tool.
Wow, wonderful. I think in this times people are going to import a lot more, right? Quick question: did the giraffe make it? He made it
yes.
safe. See,
they always make it safe.
See, not only just delivery, you do quality delivery, right?
Of course.
So just Kerryn, tell us a little bit about your reporting journey in the port, where you guys have come from and where you're at today.
Yeah, so when I first joined the port, which was about 6 years ago, they had just implemented CDM and were finalising their first report, which was a quarterly bank compliance report. At that stage, effectively, all the exec reporting, finance board papers, financial statements, all that kind of thing were being done in Word and Excel. So the traditional graphs and tables that done in Excel, copied, pasted into the Word document, and as a result, you end up with the usual version control issues, errors where one graph's been updated but another one hasn't, or a table's been updated but the commentary hasn't, you know, all those kinds of things. I was given about a day and a half's training at the Mindful offices, and then given the task of putting all our exec reporting and our board papers into CDM. So that was no small challenge on a day and a half training session. But thankfully we had a couple of Mindful consultants that were there to help. But I guess given that it was Mindful's, what was it, second implementation, it was a bit like the not so blind leading the blind. But yeah, we got there. And then for us, the next, I guess, step was the stat accounts. And at this stage, we kind of realised that we probably needed a bit more technical expertise. So Mindful kindly arranged for a developer, I think she was, or someone anyway from IBM, as it was, to come over for a couple of weeks and help us, which was fantastic. Yeah, just the learnings I got out of that for the, you know, for those couple of weeks were just invaluable. And once we'd finished the stat accounts, it just meant that we could go back and revisit some of that exec reporting, board reporting, and improve it. So yeah, so I guess from there, I mean, we're a shared service for 5 group entities. So we do the finance function for those 5 entities, as well as the port itself. And we use CDM for all our monthly, quarterly, half yearly and annual reports, or annual reporting. We don't do the annual report yet for those companies. So I think from the last count, we had approximately 25 reports being generated from CDM.
Wow,
So yeah.
that's amazing. And just what were through the journey? What was some of the greatest achievements or that you guys did through using CDM?
I think really the greatest achievements are, time and consistency of the numbers. Being able to produce a report, an updated report, be it exec, board report, budget pack, stat accounts, within 5 minutes of the numbers being finalised and changed within TM1. So being able to just refresh reports as the numbers change has been fantastic. And also when you embed things like your check variables and your validations and things within the CDM system, then you know that when you report it and you get a clear validation report, you know that the numbers are consistent throughout the report. So you don't have to go and check to make sure that the profit in the commentary is the same profit as in your P&L, or that the profit in this version of your table is the same as the other one, because it's all built into the report itself.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember when I was a CFO back in the day, I just didn't sum down in one of my reports and missed $1 million, and then I reported, and it was highly embarrassing, when you make a mistake and you put it out there, and yeah, so that's amazing. Now I'm sure
we've all been there.
I know we have. Yeah, you don't earn your stripes in the accountant if you haven't done it. So we know not all projects go wonderful and amazing, right? There's always learnings through the journey. Is there any learnings that you can share with people that are going to start or going through this journey?
Yeah, there's lots. I guess some of them for us is look at your reporting first. So what is it you want to report, and think about how you're going to create your data queries, rather than just rushing in. Kind of try and have a bit of structure to that format. And also we found we had a number of different P&L versions, format versions, a number of different balance sheets. So the stat accounts, the budget, the exec, and they all had their own different versions. So we it's just spending some time up front working out with the business what exactly you want to show, and try and consolidate those in a way. What else? I think just if you're doing reporting across multiple years, scenarios, cost centers, and accounts, it's just thinking about how to potentially structure your data queries, maybe whether you break them down into smaller parts, or you utilize the object variables within CDM, so you can generate a P&L based on department from one query. Word skills, Excel, Office Word. If you don't know it, get to know it. Throw yourself in book yourself onto a Word course, something like that, because CDM is all about Excel and Word. And as financial people, Excel, sure, tick. We know most of the functionality, but yeah, Word, not so much. So yeah, improve your word skills would be good. And the summer function as well in Excel, if you don't know it, become quite familiar with it. It's a godsend. Yeah, I think something else as well is, us being us and the way that humans work. Sometimes you go for the quick wins. So sometimes in a report, if it's not showing the right number or whatever, it's just human nature to just go in and want to change it in the CDM object. But my word of advice is don't. it will come back and bite you at some stage. So you'll have a random plus 0.3 in a P&L somewhere, and when you roll it forward for the next month, you'll be spending a wee while trying to find out why things aren't adding down and what on earth is going on. So yeah, it's just fix it at source and let CDM be CDM rather than trying to fix it within the individual reports. And the other thing, I guess, is it's not just, CDM's just not a big reporting tool. You know, you don't have to use it for your big reports. You can create a report that's got ad hoc objects in it for your graphs and your presentations and all that kind of thing, and use that as a, I guess, as a base for being able to create other reports from. So for instance, you know, if you've got a presentation pack that happens every 6 months or every quarter, throw that into CDM rather than just doing it ad hoc in Excel. And then, you know, if it's any good, inevitably you'll be asked, oh, can I have that? You know, can you redo those slides for me, or can you redo that for me? And if you spend the time up front putting it all in CDM, then it's just a click away. So yeah, so that's something that we're still learning. There's still that whole, oh, actually ad hoc request, yep, I'll do it in Excel, and then 2 days later or a month later or 6 months later, oh, can I have those, you know, can you do that work for me again? And you've just got to try and find out where you've stored it, where it's saved. So yeah, check variables and using variables in your commentary. Do that as much as possible. It's a great function, and it just means that you've got that reassurance that the profit is the profit number no matter where. So it's not like someone's reporting 43.2 somewhere in the report and now elsewhere it's 43.3. You've just got that comfort that it's everywhere. And I think the last thing would be get multiple people involved in creating the reports. I think, you know, it was just me at the beginning, and it just means that buy-in is a little bit slower. So there's no harm in getting 5 different people doing 5 different reports at the same time.
Very good. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Last question from my side is COVID. Is that going to change your BAU reporting? Is it going to change BAU for you guys, the finance team? Do you see it, and how will it change things if it does? What do you think?
I don't think COVID has changed our BAU reporting per se, but it has changed what we are reporting. So as I mentioned before, you know, with the temporary loss of the cruise business, that, you know, that just drops off. And I guess, you know, with automation coming up, it's about adding new departments, or it's yeah, so it's our process itself isn't going to change, but it's just the kind of, I guess, reports will change, your different departments, different formats, that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, we're fortunate that we've got CDM there, so it makes it a lot easier to make those changes. But I think one thing we did learn from the whole COVID thing was, you know, since lockdown started, we've had to effectively do 4 reforecasts and budgets in the space of what, 8 weeks, 7 weeks. So just as things were changing in that initial phase, you know, for us, were ship calls going to be dropped? What's the container volumes going to be like? All that kind of thing. Just highlighting the fact that actually being able to get those numbers out quickly without having to spend all that time and effort in copying and pasting graphs and things. It just means that you can spend more time on the commentary and providing more meaningful commentary to the numbers rather than spending all your time on the numbers themselves.
I love that. I love how you say it's not how we report. It's not changing how we're reporting, but what we're reporting. I love that. That's That's very true. You're absolutely right. Like, Kerryn, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the time. I know you're very, very busy, lady. So really appreciate you coming to share insights with the team. And I'm sure everyone's taking something away from that. So thank you very much for that. Before I pass over to Wayne, just a few things just to touch on. One of the things Kerryn said is spend that time upfront about what you want to report. You know, spend it to do that planning. So just a few things we've learned as well from our implementations is totally agree with Kerryn. Spend the time getting your strategy, your reporting strategy. What are you going to report? Who are you going to report it to? In what format you're going to report it? And really, through this COVID time, what I find that was becoming very important is that automation, right? We're all in our homes. We're going to remain there for quite a few times, less traveling, less FaceTime. So having to automate processes is going to be critical. And the second thing also for me is collaboration. We do need to collaborate more because we're not able to just walk over and explain a number or ask a question. It's important that we have tools that help with this collaboration and automation and help set the strategy for the business. So I'm going to pass over to Wayne, who's going to take us through some research and a little bit of what CDM is. I know most of you are now dying to know what CDM is, so I'm going to pass you over to Wayne. And what Kerryn and I are going to do is we're going to turn our cameras off to give Wayne a bit more bandwidth. Wayne, over to you.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Beautiful. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for making the time, folks. So as Belinda highlighted, I'm going to basically take you through two parts. The first part will be a bit of an overview of a recent survey that was done, global survey, and some of the learnings we're seeing from that from CFOs and organizations around the world as it relates to finance systems. And then from there, I'll flow into talking a little bit about how we can help you as you, I guess, transition from the business as usual to the kind of the new business as usual, and how we can help you with that journey. But to begin with, I thought I would just add a little bit of sort of highlights the current state as far as our day-to-day lives. And as you know, many of us have had to go through some quite significant changes over the last couple of months. And you know, some of us would like to have had the choice, perhaps, to where we worked. But most of us haven't. But here's just a bit of an overview of somebody who did have a choice and what their reaction was. I thought you might enjoy this.
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B?
I know that would have been my answer too.
Yeah, so obviously we've had to manage this big change, and some of us have had to have a virtual workplace with family around us, and maybe our wives or spouses having to work with us as well. But some of us have just had to get on with it. But some of us who have had to cope with homeschooling may have had this experience. But if you have tried this, if you haven't tried this, and please don't, we have confirmed that that it has no smell. But those of us who may have picked up some other bad habits, the prediction is that it looks like Alcoholics Anonymous may take the top spot over Weight Watchers next year. But the good news is we won't have to half dress anymore. Those of us, I mean, for me, I'm wearing my UGG boots right now, keeping my feet nice and warm. But those who are looking forward to going back to dressing in suits and nice dresses, just be careful, because some of us may have picked up some bad habits, as Belinda alluded to her husband before. Here's an example of one of those.
I haven't looked this pretty since I was a baby. All right, what's your P's and Q's? Come on, work.
Yeah, so we've probably had a few of embarrassing moments like that via Zoom already, but in real life we clearly don't want that to happen. But let's get back to business here. So I'd like to share with you this survey that was recently done by a number of CFOs around the world. And of course, we've had a lot of change since last year. So when the survey was done, I guess we were a little bit different in the way we conducted our businesses. But a lot of the learnings from the CFO study will still apply and very impactful for us today going into 2020. So let me give you a little bit of background on this. It was basically a survey that was done across 532 folks in 23 industries globally, the bulk of which were CFOs. And if you look at the demographics of the study, it was done, as I said, across the whole world, predominantly in Europe, but also from I guess a size perspective, customers ranging from small SMB sole trader companies right up to large publicly listed companies. So a very wide demographic. So some interesting learnings from those. And this is probably the nasal gazing moments. And that is, how do your stakeholders, whether they be management or your board members or your shareholders, feel about your current finance systems and how they provide accurate and timely insights? Well, this is what the survey told us. It told us that on average, 50% of CFOs or organization stakeholders felt that finance systems are strategically important, but in practice, they don't actually deliver the value the systems would like, or the business would like, beyond the day-to-day running of the business. A little bit what Kerryn described, which is, spending more time in analyzing and providing a quality narrative as opposed to just generating numbers. So having that context, what do you think CFOs are expecting from their finance systems in the future? What would they would expect from finance systems in the future? And it's interesting, this survey gave us kind of two key themes. The first one was they want to spend more time analyzing the business instead of reporting on it only. So that was definitely a key theme. And obviously, the idea around analytical tools, the likes of TM1, delivering that value. But along with that comes a need, and you can see as you go down the rest of this chart, is this kind of concept around more elasticity, being able to be more dynamic, and therefore be able to harvest the data quickly and generate the value out of the data. And I guess the other consistent theme in this is around the user experience. As Kerryn highlighted before, we have some great tools. We think about Office. What a great tool that's been for finance folks, and well, anyone in the business really. But you really need to make sure that you can use those tools effectively and they're easy to use, which is obviously what Office has historically provided. So if you thought life was tough in 2019, and we've got these unprecedented changes now happening in 2020, whether we like it or not, our world has had a layer of complexity added to it. We've had to navigate through our family and our work-life balance to adapt to these changes. But the real question is, how prepared are we for change today, and how prepared have we been for change in the past? And it's interesting, if we look at this survey at how CFOs feel about approaching change, and then think about how that would be applied in today, there's a couple of things that stand out here. Now, just one comment I want to make here is when we refer to this comment here around replacing finance systems, it's a very broad term, right? So this will vary from organization to organization, and already obviously would depend on how much change has already been implemented. So for example, in your case, most of you have implemented TM1. You've already gone through that quite big change of putting a really solid financial and planning analytics system in place. But the general feeling is that most companies here are stuck in this sort of status quo. So they're generally relying on quite manual processes to do things, just generally manual, and therefore not spending enough time in actually extracting the value out of the financial systems they have today. So if we have the example of what Kerryn highlighted before, think about how Kerryn has automated some of those reporting processes, which gives her more time to spend time in the narrative and explain to the business what's actually happening in the business. So obviously the opportunity here is really about how you can adapt to change to the extent of what you already have as far as better finance tools and systems. Now, what's also interesting, just as a highlight, we talk about this change and being kind of stuck in the status quo. The one thing that has been a dominant theme as far as being willing to change or to accept change is this: 92% of these respondents did recognize that moving to the cloud technologies would deliver immediate value, right? So, and that was obviously around lower management and maintenance costs, more flexibility and be able to scale infrastructure, and therefore not being inhibited by how they can actually harvest all this data that they have in these great analytical tools and finance tools they've already implemented. So they see this as a quick win, and that is definitely you can see this is the overarching theme in this slide. So just the last point on the survey, and that is, well, all this context here, really does it apply to me because maybe I'm really mature, I've got robust systems in place, legacy systems for long periods of time, or I'm a really small company, and we're reasonably agile, and we kind of don't think we need to make any significant changes. But there was sort of 3 things that did come out that were consistent, irrespective of the size of your company. And the one thing that kind of stood out, which is quite interesting, and Kerryn actually touched on it, and that is around skill development and training. So even simple training, you've got great tools. We talk about Office, we talk about TM1. How much time are you ensuring that your employees, your team are actually effective at using those tools? And it's interesting, we've even found, we obviously have about 1,000 CDM customers globally, and we've quite a large proportion of those in ANZ. And I've actually gone to the Australia and New Zealand customers and offered some kind of refresh training on the latest capabilities around CDM, and it's been very welcomed. And of course, because of COVID, a lot of people are working from home, less time, commuting, is a bit of free time to invest in training. So this has definitely been, I guess the message here is, if you do have great finance tools, make sure you invest in ensuring your teams can use them effectively. And by doing so, also encourage innovative thinking. So as Kerryn highlighted before, think about how you can use what you already have elsewhere, right? And so that's kind of the opportunity. So out of all of this, right now, probably the area that stands out here, that's a consistent opportunity, is around enablement and training. So that's an interesting theme that came out of this study. So I thought I'd share that with you, just to provide some context of some of the global trends, and use that as a kind of a backdrop to talk about, okay, so now we've looked at that, what's your new business as usual for financial reporting? So how can we help you to leverage what you already have and get value out of the way in which you currently do your reporting specifically, because you really have some great tools. So I thought I'd sort of share with you some of the common challenges that we're seeing in the marketplace around reporting, and I'm sure many of these will be familiar to you. So obviously many companies have multiple data inputs or data sources. Obviously it would be better to consolidate those, which is part of the promise of the likes of TM1. But nevertheless, you have to do many types of reports. You generally have many stakeholders, and they then have to generate those reports for both internal and external consumers. Internal consumers being boards, management teams, etc. External being statutory, regulatory, or the public. And often those processes are very manual, time-consuming, and as Kerryn highlighted before, can be prone to error when they're done manually. And of course, you can have control version issues. So that's the kind of common challenge. And not only do you have that just generally as a general statement for generating reports, this same challenge applies to whether you're doing a annual report, whether you're doing board reports, management accounts. The same kind of principle flows through. And unfortunately, the reality is that whatever reporting you do today, it comes around over and over again. It's an annual report. Every year you have to do an annual report, half-yearly, quarterly, management packs, board packs, etc. So these challenges repeat themselves over and over again. And if we just take one example, when we speak about narrative and numbers, narrative reporting, this is when we have to do a report where there's an association in a report between numbers and narrative. And so there could be a value, it could be a financial value, it could be a numerical value, it could be a period, it could be a reference of a time, one number over another number, a percentage. It could be an actual word like increase, decrease, greater than, less than. All of these are an opportunity for error if these processes, these reports are built manually. And this is just an example of one page of an IBM annual report. So I know we've got some IBM folks on this call, the 2016 annual report. And you just think about how embarrassing it would be if any one of these numbers were incorrect in this annual report. There's so many opportunities here for error. So I guess it begs the question, okay, well, with all that in context, what can I do today? And how can something like Certent, a company like Certent, offer you value beyond what you're doing today? So I thought I'd kind of start by highlighting, well, what is certain? Where does it live within your business or within the workflow? And so just to make sure you understand the concept, I guess, of what Certent does or CDM does, you have your data sources, you have your systems that generate the data, your sources of truth. What Certent does is basically extracts that data, so that obviously points to the data that's relevant, whether it be in a Word document, a PowerPoint presentation, an investor relation report, whether it be an Excel a file of some description, and we create a linkage to those data sources. So whatever is living within those documents is being extracted from a single source of truth, which is the other point that Kerryn made earlier, right? Is make sure you don't that you're always linking to the single source of truth. And then what we do is we wrap a whole bunch of value around that. So as you build a report, we implement workflows, we enable version controls, we make sure that those linkages are made between the numbers and the narrative, and we do that all using Microsoft Office native tools. And we have this other great capability around roll forward, where you can roll your reports forward month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. And then what we do is we then generate those reports out of CDM into a format that is the format that you want your stakeholders to consume, whether it be presentation board or whatever form that may be. And we do that in the various formats, and I'll touch on that in a minute. So to give you kind of a sense of what the user experience is in CDM, I thought I'd just kind of make a couple of points here. Firstly, it's a highly secure environment. So you basically only get to see the reports that you're entitled to see. So that is obviously set by your administrator or by the business. And in this instance, there are 2 reports that this user can see, and they would log into one of those reports. And what you see here is a very familiar view, which is a Word document. And this is your annual report in Word. And obviously we have a navigation tree to the left. So at this point now, the user is having a very familiar experience. They're seeing a Word document, and they're seeing a Word document with the elements of the Word document that they're entitled or able to see and work on, depending on their permissions. And within that, we made sure that we've got workflows put in place. So we've got the right people working on the right parts of the document, presentation, PowerPoint presentation, or Word document at any point in time. And that obviously those workflows are automated. So once something's completed, it sends an automatic notification to the right person to make them aware of what the next action is by when. So all of that is built into CDM. So it's nice and neat, and from a collaboration perspective, very important. And then of course we need to make sure that we've got an audit control function, so we can see who's doing what, who's made what changes, etc. And we can do this at a document level, at a section level. We can do this at multiple version levels. We can do rollbacks, etc. So all that capability is built into CDM. And then, as Kerryn highlighted before, this is a really important function, which is the full validation capability, where obviously you make sure your validation rules are put in place before you publish those reports, and you need to make sure you pass them all. So once you pass them all, you have confidence that this report can be published to whichever stakeholder it needs to be published to. Now, this is one of the real strengths, and this is kind of the point, once again, Kerryn, I know I'm repeating myself here as far as you're referring to your presentation or your thoughts, but this is really important, and that is, once you have created all these linkages to the single source of truth within the CDM report, irrespective of whether that's the PowerPoint or the Word or Excel or some other documents, as long as you are keeping true to that, you can always trust that whatever report you generate is going to be accurate. So in this particular instance, if your income statement changes and your revenue changes, and at the last minutes, here you can see this has happened. It's gone to 2.8 million. You don't have to worry, right? You do a refresh in your Word document, your annual report, it will automatically update any reference to revenue, whether it be in the number or the narrative, all the way through that annual report. So it automatically makes all those adjustments for you. And if at the same time you've got somebody who's doing an investor relations version to the media, it will go into that investor relations report and do the exact same thing. So it'll go and highlight the revenues change. It'll obviously also affect the narrative. So if revenue went up or down, it'll actually automatically update that it's gone up or down. So that's obviously very valuable. And then, of course, if you're doing some kind of presentation pack associated with that report, it'll go in there and do the same thing. So any chart, graph, any slide that references that you create a linkage to that source data, that revenue data, will automatically go and update that PowerPoint deck. So I mean, simultaneously, you've got all these reports synchronized to reflect what's actually happening at the source data. So that's obviously very, very important. And then once you've done that, and now you've rinse and repeat, you're doing the same reports or report, you can go in there and use this roll forward function, which will automatically give you the opportunity to determine what you want to change the period to, and you want to change it by 1 year forward. You roll 1 year forward, it'll automatically publish that annual report for you to work on, roll forward exactly 1 year, exactly the same annual report, except all of the data through that report is now referencing 2019, and the year to year wouldn't be 2018 to 2017, it's now 2019 to 2018. So it does that all the way through. So now you can spend time on the narrative, on the actual explaining, what's changed, as opposed to actually building the report. So that now it takes minutes instead of weeks. So that's obviously very powerful. Just on the publishing of the report, here is an example of the very first annual report that was ever published by a modern corporate company, and this is back in 1903. So we've got a long way from publishing reports in this way, but with CDM you can basically publish reports in what you would expect, in the various Word versions or Office versions. In Adobe, we can publish it to desktop publishing, to Adobe InDesign, for example, if you have an external publishing house. Or we have this new capability to publish to HTML, which means you can natively publish directly from your Word document or your PowerPoint presentation to HTML. So here's an example of one of our customers who did that. You can see on the left-hand side is the Word version, the actual annual report in the Word side. On the right-hand side is pixel perfect, the HTML directly to either an external website, an intranet or extranet, right, or internet. So this is very valuable. You can use this for internal reporting, so you can share, collaborate reports internally within your organization, or you can do this for external reporting as well. So this is a very valuable, powerful new capability that we've introduced. So kind of in summary, I just wanted to give you a taste of what CDM does. But fundamentally, what it means is that you have users being able to, a user or a group of users being able to do, generate any types of reports, build and generate external, regulatory, internal, or other reports. And we often find that companies will start somewhere and then kind of work across. So I guess an example here of Ports of Auckland, they kind of started on the right hand side, more with the internal reporting, and then kind of went across to the statutory and external reporting, moving towards the left. We have other companies, like especially in government, who tend to go the opposite direction. They tend to focus on the external reports, budget books, etc., and then they move across to internal reporting. So it doesn't really matter, irrespective. As a CDM user, you can generate any type of report, any volume, in any period. So obviously the value that we're bringing to the table is we're enabling you to kind of build your reports and generate those in a highly controlled environment with governance built around that. You can trust it. It's a single source of truth. The other mention is we have complete flexibility in how you deploy CDM. If you want to deploy it on premise, on a private cloud, and we can host it for you. And it's a very simple kind of user model. You're the contributor, a reviewer, or approver as a CDM user. And then finally, obviously one of the critical values, especially now through the time we're going through, is the ability to collaborate effectively as you build your reports, which is what CDM obviously offers to you, as you have seen. And then around standardization, once again, that was touched on a little bit earlier. And most importantly, it makes it so much easier for people to work together, which generates, I guess from a human perspective, morale. People are working more effectively together, putting less pressure in the pressure cooker of finance, in the Office of Finance. So just to kind of to leave something with you, I guess, to help you along to consider how you could actually, I guess, try CDM. We're actually offering something quite unique. I've just got approval to do this. This is the first country in the world that we're offering this to. And basically, it's an offer where we will subsidize 1 year of access to CDM for 50 users at no cost. So that means we'll allow you to basically activate 50 CDM users to generate any types of reports, as many as you like, for the next 12 months. And so what happens after the 12 months fundamentally is that at the end of the 12 months, you can nominate to say, yeah, we've tried it out. We think we would like 20 users would be the number of users that we would like. What we're offering is that we'll actually give you those 20 user licenses, whatever number you nominate, up to 50 users at no cost. They'll be free. You only have to pay for the support, the maintenance of those licenses. So this is obviously a very unique offering that we're offering to New Zealand. And just to provide some context of what the value of this is, if you look at for example, a 25, let's assume an average 25 user license, we would normally pay 84,000 for that and 23,000 for the support. So that means for the next 12 months, if you had to activate 25 users, there's $108,000 that we're actually bringing to the table. We're putting on the table, and that means basically in the first year there would be zero cost for using 10, 25, or 50 users. The only thing that we are asking, because the way our licensing model works, is you need to have a platform license, like a base server license. You'd need to invest in the base server license. That would be the only cost, and then we'd offer you all of these users at no cost for the next 12 months. And as I said before, you can then nominate how many of those users you would actually like going into year 2, and then we'd only charge you the SNS, the maintenance on those users. So this is obviously a bit of a unique offering that we're offering to Mindful's TM1 customers. So we obviously welcome the opportunity for you to take up that offer. And that's it for me. So I'll hand it back to Belinda.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Wayne. I really love it. That's awesome. I haven't got any questions. There's been no questions popped in the little question box, so we must have blown them away. So yeah, just to summarize what both Wayne and Kerryn has said, this is really, we called it the final mile of automation, because what we do find is that accountants spend a huge amount of time with the finance systems up front to get the ERP systems, to get that all automated, to get down to that very, very day 2 close of the financial accounts, but then spend a lot of time cross-checking information in Excel and spreadsheets and Word, etc. And this solution just fits very nicely in to address that issue of automation, that collaboration, being able to workflow together. You know, are we waiting for the CFO's comment? Let's get that comment done. Let's get the reports done. And all that's just done. And you can just sleep at night to know you didn't have the numbers wrong. All of that's done for you through the solution. So after this, please will reach out to anyone to see if you want to take up this amazing offer that Certent have provided. It's a great opportunity. You should try. Talk to us about POCs and other demo discussions. So we'll follow up after this to see if anyone's interested in that. But I just want to thank both Kerryn for her time. She's a very, very busy lady, and Wayne for coming join us today. So unless there's any other questions, I can't see any other questions. I think we'll give you each a few minutes spare so you can run and get that coffee or that food to eat for lunch. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It was really great to see a lot of people attending this webinar, and we appreciate everyone spending the time. So have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for that. Cheers.
See ya.